Hi, I'm Allison Maley. Welcome to another IPA Talk. Today I have with me Anita Banerjee with Forefront, an organization that's working with Illinois to administer the census. So we're going to learn more about that today. So Anita, would you like to introduce yourself and kind of speak about what Forefront does?
Sure. So my name is Anita Banerjee. I'm the director of what we call the Democracy Initiative at a statewide organization called Forefront. We're formerly known as the Donors Forum, and we have about 1,100 members. We serve grant makers and nonprofits as a membership organization providing programming, training, resources, and best practices to help our work in the social impact sector.
Well, great. So can you tell me a little bit about what is important about the census and why do we need to make sure that we get an accurate count?
Sure. So as part of Forefront's Democracy Initiative, the census work is a very big portion of the work that we do statewide. It's a further extension of civic engagement, and the census is important for three main reasons for any state, but in particular for Illinois. First, our congressional representation is based off a fair and accurate census count. So since 1950, Illinois has lost one congressional seat in every census cycle. So we used to have 24 members of Congress. We now have 18. Keeping with that trend, we'll likely lose one seat next year, but what we're actually hearing is we may lose a second. And that would be detrimental for the many voices that we need to lift up in Congress. The second reason is our federal dollars, right? So based off our census count, that then determines how much we get in federal funding for the next decade ahead. And right now it's said that we receive about $20 billion annually for 15, 16 big social service programs. But it's actually a lot more. It's probably closer to the 35 billion mark. That's like over $200 billion in federal funding for an entire decade. So it really behooves our state to think about ensuring that people are counted, all residents across the state, so that we get a fair portion of that money coming to the various districts in our state. And the third reason is, and this is the part that lots of folks don't always think about, is that if we don't have fair and accurate data, we're not going to be able to plan for a better tomorrow.
Sure. Can you maybe drill down into the federal funding that schools then receive? I mean, is it more than just free and reduced lunch, or can you kind of speak about those types of things that schools specifically are receiving based on those numbers? Yeah,
well, I can't speak about the exact numbers, but I'm sure if you were to look at this, there's a particular study conducted by George Washington University. It's called the Andrew Reamer's Counting for Dollars study. And that will actually break down by state about how much money comes in federal dollars and for what various programs. But when you think about funding for schools, it's not just about the free, reduced, National Lunch School program. It's also about school enrollment. It's about, school retainment. It's about all the other federal assistance grants that can come to given schools, Title I funding. All of that is predicated on census data.
Gotcha. Well, then how can administrators and educators help with this process? What can they do?
Sure. That's a great question. So when we think about doing this work smarter, not harder, we think about it being a more collaborative effort. And we really need our school educators, our superintendents, our principals, our local school councils, our parent teacher associations to step up and be those trusted community messengers. And that really means putting together town halls, conversations, social media campaigns. Social media has never been used in really doing outreach for the census before. And the census is going online for the first time. So this really is an opportunity for everyone to step up. And knowing that educators are trusted community leaders, there's no better way than to take this on as part of the portfolio to ensure that all of our families across our state are being accounted for.
And your organization has some resources that educators can use too, that we can certainly link to and share with our members through this portal or through other means. But can you talk about some of those things that are available for educators just to kind of learn more and find out what they can do to help?
Yeah, so the Census Bureau has what is called Statistics in Schools. It's a document that's recently come out. We will be linking that to Forefront Census website, and that website is ilcountmein2020.org. as we have more information and fact sheets for educators, all of that information will be available this fall.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Anita, can you talk a little bit about hard to count communities and what that means and again, what we can do to help with that?
Yeah, sure. So hard to count communities are traditionally known as communities of color, immigrant communities, but it's actually so much more. It's about the disabled communities, the renters, the homeless, the disabilities community, and families with children 0 to 5. Would you believe that's actually the largest hard to count population in the country? In 2010, it was estimated that over 1 million children of that age range were unaccounted for. That's a lot of people. Yeah. And when you think about congressional representation, you think about the federal dollars we could have utilized in our state, that comes out to about 100,000 children in Cook County alone. Wow. That's a lot of students, a lot of people that are now 10, 15 years old, right, that need necessary resources. Sure. So hard to count populations aren't just demographic, they're also geographic. And when we think about the census going online for the first time, rural communities are very much a hard to count population.
Sure. Yeah, bandwidth and availability, all that kind
access
of stuff.
to broadband,
exactly.
All of that. So we need to be really intentional and mindful of how we do that outreach.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, what can we have as our biggest takeaway from today's talk, and what can we do in the future to kind of help make sure that this is an accurate count and making sure that we get all the resources that Illinois deserves based on the amount of people we have?
Yeah, I would say that in 2010, Illinois was middle of the pack in self-reporting. Okay. We had Minnesota and Michigan really go the extra mile to get an accurate count for their state, so they were able to get good federal dollars and retain their congressional representation. You know, with Illinois being one of 3 states with the most to lose in this upcoming, decennial census, I think it really behooves our state to think about the various ways in which we're leading the country in our outreach. Sure. Right? We've got a governor and an Illinois General Assembly that appropriated $29 million for outreach purposes. We have Illinois philanthropy for the first time in census history, 22 members coming together with $1.75 million in funds that have gone out already. So the big takeaway here is collaboration. Sure. It's really bringing our trusted community messengers, our leaders together so that we can ensure a better tomorrow, a better future, so that we incentivize for folks to stay in Illinois. When we think about the renter population, so many of those folks are students that are going to NIU or going to SIU or going to, are part of the UIUC system, right? If we're going to incentivize for them to stay, we need for them to be counted. And beyond that, we need then that data to be shared with businesses, with small businesses, with schools, so that we can best prepare and plan for our future.
Sounds great. All right. Well, thanks again to Anita for joining us today with this IPA Talk. We will have some more links available about Forefront's efforts and Illinois Count Me In 2020. There we go. So we will have more links to that in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in to this IPA Talk.